You are just in time for another exciting episode of Kenya Explained here on YouTube. I am your host, Esther Nyonje. Now keep subscribing to this YouTube channel, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a pleasure to always see you here. Make sure you interact in the comment section with me. Share this video to as many people as possible so that this content that I say is important to you. I mean, at this time, it is very important for you to be in the wake and know these things that are happening around you, socially, economically, and politically. This information, I say, is power. And if we do not talk about it, then how will you understand? I'm not alone today. I am joined by Matungu's finest experts. He's an analyst, Arnold Maliba. Pleasure.
You well?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for coming here on time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Maisha inaendelea aje uko pale uko?
Maisha iko mzuri. Homa kidogo, mvua ipo, lakini we are doing fine. Yourself?
I am very well, as you can see. I am lit and ready for this discussion because I think it's going to be a hot one today.
Well, we are only two, so I hope it will be easy and not necessarily heated now that we don't have...
now that Fred Okanga is not here today, I think he'll have to send his apologies.
Fred probably is with us in the spirit. It's only the body that is not here. But
I wanted him to come. I wanted him to come and tell us the other side of things. You know, it would be a good perspective, but... We continue.
I know Fred probably really was hoping to come were the prices of fuel to shoot. But now, incidentally, the prices, petrol has remained the same. Both paraffin and diesel has gone down. So I know Fred is not so happy. He's recovering from the news he didn't expect.
Why is he not so happy while it's a drop or it has maintained?
When you're doing oppositionist politics, you expect things to go bad. It gives you a little bit of currency. But then when a government is working and performing, people on the side that is supposed to be opposing, especially if opposing is an end in itself, literally don't like it. But
at this point, you know, we're not praying for the government to fail. We are praying for it to do well because it's for the good of all of us.
I very much doubt that all of us understand things from that perspective. It's been a while now. Kenyans have moved away from being the patriotic people they were. There was a time when being Kenyan was something that people would actually, the way you would actually keep things from your personal stuff. I think this social media craze and wokeness has also found its way in the way we do our politics, the body politic, and even the civic understanding of stuff. Like Kenyans today would be so happy if their government can actually mess up so that then they go out there and tell the whole world how bad it is.
Are you sure? Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk in the comment section. Tell me if you think what Arnold is saying. Are you praying for this government to fail? And looking at our topic today, it's hope or gloom for the country. I'm sure Arnold here would give hope, and if Fred was here, I don't know about it, but the topic today is hope or gloom for the country. What is your general feeling about the status of the country today? And in the work of the President's State of Nation address last week.
Actually, before we talk about hope or gloom, it's just important that I probably bring home the point I'm trying to make. That a section of Kenyans have not moved on from the elections last year. So they still carry on
the pain.
The pain. I don't want to call it a referred pain, but the pain is still quite evident. So you are going to get the worst of the image from your country. You put it out there and even call upon other people not to come to your own country. There's still a section of Kenyans who, so long as it's not their political side that is actually in control, then the country will rather go down the drain. There's quite, and that number is going up. You know, when we were young boys, we had this immaturity where if I don't get the whole thing, then all of us miss. So there's still that feeling. I see it a lot. You know, you get a leaking video from the airport. It's an old one, but you put it out there. You get a story about a mean officer, and all countries have traveled across Africa, and we still across the world. And I've actually met once in a while I meet an officer who might not be really experiencing a good day. That officer does not, for me, define the country I've gone to. He doesn't. Of all the people, for example, the 200 and almost 80 million people in the US, at JFK airport in New York, I get in, I meet a lady who didn't treat me so well. That lady did not, for me, define the land of the free and the home of the brave. No. America is much more than that single officer I actually met at the airport then.
All right. Well, on that point, Arnold, if you talk about one person, maybe it's the general feeling of, if you're in a happy country, then the attitude of the people is going to be positive. But if you meet people who are throwing their attitudes here and there, maybe that's the general feeling. And getting to our discussion, just in line with what you were saying, the president, I would say bullishly, noted that the country is moving on the right track. And he noted that we are on the right track for takeoff. So it is a conversation that is good in the books. But on the ground, Arnold, we are looking at constant price of fuel that hasn't gone down, only for diesel and kerosene. We are looking at debt servicing. We are looking at, what else? Taxes. Widening the tax base, that he's looking for more areas to tax, and there's an outcry about these taxes. So the effects are not being felt to the people, but the president says we are moving in the right direction. So what is just the reality of the status of the economy of Kenya?
If you're going to look at a nation, the story of a nation is much more complex than we try sometimes to portray it in the media. A story is told of blind people. I think they were 3. Who had an experience with an elephant. So one of them held the trunk, held the leg, felt like it's like a tree. Another one held the ears, he said it's like a blanket. I forget about the other part. So everyone else was, I have seen an elephant. The other person, it looks like a tree. The other one, how does it look? So if you're going to discuss a coin from one side, you don't get it right. So the president gives an analogy where we are on the right track to take off. What he's telling us, and we don't want to hear, is that we had derailed. If we were trained, we had derailed. So we are now back on track for purposes of then taking off. And that is the story we don't want to hear. I know slightly over a half of the population today are people who are what I would call Generation Z, and the Alpha generation. The Alpha generation might not be out there already making noise, but Gen Z. And then the bigger part of the adult population on this other end are then millennials. Are people who might not be necessarily quite good at patience. They don't have tolerance. They are the click generation, the .com generation.
Results now.
And the microwave people, as in, I want my instant coffee. You fix it quite quickly. You can't tell me that I'm brewing coffee. It tastes differently. Even though as they get older, they start loving 18-year-old drinks. They love the older they drink. They show it up there. But they know that, would they wait for 18 years for anything to actually come up so that you can actually have that bargaining moment? So it's important that we look back where we have been, because without the benefit of where we've come from, we definitely do not know where we are. And we'll be lying to people if we talk about where we are going. Because a person who doesn't know where he's come from most likely doesn't know where he is, and he has no idea where he's going. So we must have the benefit of where we've come from to appreciate where we are, and then talk about where we are going. For 10 years, we've not really managed the country well. We've not done a proper fiscal management. We've not done sound financial management as a country, and the consequences are with us. When we were clapping, when we loans coming in unnecessarily, bringing in projects that what I would feel like we went onto an impulse shopping sort of. So we've done all that. Now we are here. Those loans are due for payment. The economy is not, there's no miracle that has happened in this economy. 2, ever since 1992, you can draw Kenya's growth, economic growth, that as we head to elections, the economy dips. And then now that after elections, it starts to stabilize. Midway, it gets to the optimum. Then again, as we head to campaign, then it goes down. Because we are yet to stabilize our politics to the level where the markets are not shaken by elections. So we're just coming off elections. We completely are not off that particular feeling. We still have got NADCO around here. We had elections, of course, generally bringing down economic activity and eating into the productivity of a nation. We came out of elections. Again, we weren't satisfied. We had post-election disturbances. They're really not gone off. So as we struggle to balance all that, so you've had 10 years of mismanagement. You've had COVID coming in. Now you have got elections coming in. As you try to stabilize that, we have had drought. Now we have got El Nino coming in. And then, of course, globally, there are the global shocks affecting everybody in one way or the other, especially now that we are no longer the people who used to feed from the village. Now we've got everything from elsewhere. So you have to look at that as a compound phenomenon before you make a simplistic statement, a simple line. It's in this country where you take years to do research, build up, model, and do a technical paper. And someone seated somewhere in this particular country, sometimes doing coffee or in their house, rubbishes that paper with one line. As in, an economy is far too complex for us to actually run around with, you were in this party and I was in this party, and therefore what you are saying doesn't make sense.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You make a lot of sense saying that. But Arnold Maliba, the president, who is the governor of this country, got into power on a notion that is going to reform the economy, and he gave the timelines. He did not speak about external factors. You know, when you're making plans, you need to factor in some things that you might see or not see, you know?
Yeah.
So when you come into power on a very optimistic note and say that in 100 days, I am going to do this and this. In 100 days, the price of unga is going to be this. And then when you get into power, you give a different version of the story. So it keeps me wondering, how is he going to achieve his manifesto when already it's in the gutters? How is he going to cushion Kenyans against the high cost of living? How is he going to deal with graft in his government and take the country to the next step as he promised us during the elections?
Well, as an individual, I am not so much now with experience. I think I am not a fan of this 100 days phenomenon.
But he said it.
You know, we've been borrowing things from elsewhere, even where they don't make sense.
The president said it.
For example, I know. That's what I'm saying. I am not a fan of these 100 days of my office, 100 days of this. We borrowed this thing from the Americans, not because the Americans are doing it and they really have come off over time as the people who do things well. We really have tried to borrow from them and carry. In 100 days in a country where you've not factored in people going to the Supreme Court, you've not factored in 100 days of your election, right? So you are elected, yes. We waste about 21 days, about a month in court and drama. And even after that, we still have got people going to the streets. Are you going to get hold of these people, put them in some room somewhere, and tell them, okay, now I'm keeping you here so that I deliver my 100 days? No. The eventualities that come with that. So I think that on that particular aspect, we need to be telling politicians not to try go that direction.
Exactly.
Because again, we have got a constitution in place where even if you're going to appoint people, you have got a time frame in which you can actually appoint people. We have got a policy cycle in this particular country that you actually has got timelines on how you actually work around that. We also have got even the budgeting cycle. So you are not going to come in and review how we do budgeting. It's constitutional. It's statutory. There is a way we do our budgets. There is a way we do laws. There is a way you even bring people into office. The government you're going to work with. So there are a few things you can do. You can make declarations, overturn a few things here and there. But I do not think with the Constitution 2010, you can actually do anything substantive. Because how long does it take to appoint CSS, vet them, or rather to nominate, vet, and appoint. How long is it also going to take you to bring in a PS, who is actually the accounting officer, to nominate those guys, vet them, and then
the
appoint,
unforeseen circumstances of going to court.
Because again, people will go to court for one reason or the other. So this 100 days phenomenon, for me, I think it's one of those things we need to drop from the political talk that we have.
All right.
But for purposes of exciting masses and looking like you are a man who is already on the job, people keep on. Everybody talks about 100 days.
It's a campaign language.
Yes, but realistically, you realize that the Constitution has got so much. The timelines, you forget that people will go to court.
Yes.
Things happen. And then sometimes there's the post-election phenomenon that we've really become accustomed to. So in 100 days, you realize that the real productive days you have probably are 40 or 50 maximum.
All right.
And in that, how much are you going to do? So you realize that people are missing the cut, their 100 days cut, very much so. Probably, I think, going forward, if anyone is going to promise 100 days, they should be able to promise low-lying fruits, things that you can actually turn around faster. But foundational stuff, things that really need a lot of energy, I doubt. That's why I'm actually saying I'm not a believer in that 100 days phenomenon and rally, that people are rallied around some 100 days change.
Right.
Also, an economy is not popcorn. You cannot turn the economy by a switch. It's not instant coffee. So even if you came in 100 days, what are you able to do on the pillars that actually inform the economy in 100 days? 100 days is when fuel, from the day we've actually, a lot of times, it takes about 100 days to do shipping. So are you really going to change really prices in 100 days? Not likely.
All right.
How long does it take to actually plant maize, which is food we use in this country? 100 days is not enough to actually have planted maize. You come to office at a time probably, and we are not irrigation based, so you cannot dictate that.
Okay.
So I am not really a believer in 100 days. Now, to the other aspects that you raised.
How is he going to balance all these things? Meet debt obligations, cushion the economy, stabilize the economy, widen the tax base, deal with graft.
All that I believe. How are you going to deal with the graft? The graft is within the criminal justice system. It's much, much more than just coming in and stabilizing. Also, there are these words, normally when you see in a bill or a piece of legislation, get a little bit skeptical. People within policy spaces will tell you, if you see words enhance, stabilize, enhance, those types of words, promote, if you are told promote a certain activity, as in, it becomes a little bit difficult. And you see a lot of bills have got, and even campaign promises, we will enhance. What is enhancing? We will promote. What is promoting? As in, those are not quantifiable things. They are quite qualitative. So for purposes of results, when you're coming in, if somebody is using qualitative terms, you also need to get skeptical about that. But that is the campaign language. That is the political language we are used to. Otherwise, if I told you I'm going to enhance your living, how do you
measure?
I will move you from a house probably where you pay 10,000 to 10,500 shillings. I've enhanced you by 500. It might not be so different. So there's the bit to that. But then let us get to the plan. The plan is quite elaborate on what they need to do. But if I look at it, it clearly outlines what they are going to do. What I think they were too ambitious on are the timelines. Also, what they were not very honest with us, at least, was to tell us that it wasn't going to be easy. Somebody will tell you, I'm going to make your face better. But they don't tell you that you are going to probably have to eat vegetables. For some of us who don't like vegetables, you have to eat vegetable continuously. Is it an easy process? No. But does it get to the desired effect? Yes. So, good promises, a good plan, the languaging and the times. I think also the population was not ready for this.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So,
all right.
They have the plan. Stabilizing the economy. By stabilizing an economy, you get in and you realize you do not have money, the economy is not producing enough. How do you stabilize that? You have to enhance tax collection. How do you enhance tax collection where the biggest part of the economy is informal? Is that then you come up with a new way of doing taxes that might not be very popular with those people who feel like they are really on the wall. But what are you trying to do? You're trying to net in all the other people. You cannot have in governance surgical designs around some of these policies. There is going to be an overlap. Just like in geography, you will always get an overlap. You're going to get somebody who is in this particular field. When you try to catch his neighbor who has not been in that particular net, somehow that net has got a way of getting hold of his leg before it gets the neighbors. So those overlaps then bring in the hue and cry that you hear about. Otherwise, how are you going to pay debt from nowhere? How are you going to pay debt that is obnoxious, way out of proportion? The economy is not producing as much. The debt is now due and in huge amounts. How do you go about that? So a lot of people feel like the measures are punitive. They are not. They are not. We are trying to ensure that the people, the 3.5 million with pay as you earn, who over time, of course, have been milked so much, also get a little bit of value for what they pay for by ensuring that even the others also are captured and are brought into this net. You know, no one loves paying taxes, realistically. No one loves. People could be willing to pay, but they don't love it.
It's a pinch.
Yeah, it's a pinch. So there is no day, I have never had a country where people say, okay, we are going to pay our taxes gladly singing. No, they will always complain.
Okay.
So the complaints about taxes is going to be there. The economy that we found, a car without tires, seated on stones. So by the time you get new tires, oil it up, clean it up, warm it up, some other people who wanted a quick journey would feel like hii safari imechelewa sana.
So you're one of the propagators of cry now, laugh later. Is that later ever going to come?
The alternative is that we could try to pretend in short term that things are okay.
How do we pretend when we are feeling
we
it
could
to
pretend
the
way
bone?
we actually had. You realize that the economy was. I don't know if you know there are guys who, if they give you their car, huwezi maliza nayo safari. There is this guy who understands his car. He knows anafinya hapa, anashikilia hapa, anafanya hivi, and he just keeps on moving. Akikupea gari yake wewe ujaribu kuendesha, utaenda.
You know, someone,
that is exactly how our economy was. So,
someone mentioned to me that yes, times are tough right now, but do you know in Uhuru's government we never used to pay a lot of taxes, but right now we have to pay those taxes and meet those debt obligations that were taken in the previous government. Okay, that was just someone's comment.
Somehow we weren't going to escape. An economy, a lot of times when how you deal with the debt in an economy is like how the brain deals with oxygen. If you derive the brain even the slightest of oxygen, or rather a moment where there's no supply to the brain, there are always consequences. You can't cheat the brain of oxygen. So we played around with the debt in the economy. The consequences were coming. And by the way, the only thing that keeps on surprising me is that we as a nation are surprised that we are here. When 3 years ago, economists were telling us that we were headed here. 5 years ago, people were saying that the way we are taking debt was unsustainable, and by 2022, we will actually be in the red, that we will be defaulting. And now we are here and we are surprised. Yet people and projections were telling us we would get here. What we are not asking is that without this, what we consider the pinch at the moment, where would we be? Most probably we will already have defaulted. And the consequences of such a situation are far worse than what we feel now. What a lot of people do not want to actually hear is that probably we are where we are, painful as it is, because of the hard decisions we've taken. And the president said the other day when he was doing a State of the Nation that we need the right way of going about this thing. This is decent, this is respectful, this is sustainable, other than having some false hope, a bubble that will then burst on us and then we cannot control.
Okay.
So he's just gotten hold of the economy when it's at the worst point, but it hadn't gotten to not salvageable. At least at this particular level, we can salvage it with a little bit of pain, but we will get there. I know by 2025, the economy will be in a place where people then can start feeling, okay, makes sense. But for the time being, no. Okay.
Now, we use the wait and see approach there. And now the question I want to ask is, if you were an opposition leader, at this moment, what would you advise the government to do? For example, the opposition leader right now is advising the government to cut the budget by 300 billion. It's easy to say because he's not there in the governing seat.
The same way William Ruto was actually saying the things that Uhuru Kenyatta will be doing right.
Well, he was
now
not
he's
there.
seated there. He realizes that some of these things are easily said.
So how do you think the opposition can go about this rather than take people to the streets? Because you say by 2025.
I think if I were an opposition leader, realistically, I'll tell you how I look at it. Number one, I would tell the president to stop the idea of constitutionalizing the CDF. You've spoken about graft. You've spoken about waste. You've spoken about how things are being lost. When we were crafting the Constitution 2010, we were fighting against one enemy that all of us knew, and that is imperial presidency. We hoped that by putting in checks and balances and lumping power in parliament, that so many people seated together would not agree to conspire against a nation. Because parliament, by definition, is actually the reflection of a nation, that when you see parliament, you see a nation.
Yes.
But somehow, there is a direct correlation with the death of parliament as the oversight agency and CDF. CDF, when we brought it in, was a pilot project for devolution for us. We wanted to see if it could work. We wanted to take resources to the ground and give people decision-making at that particular level. Eventually, we put that in the Constitution 2010. CDF has made MPs blunt. The legislative organ is no longer functional because MPs are busy managing CDF as opposed to doing the very thing that MPs should actually be doing. Number one, it should be representation. MPs do not want and do not think there is no glory in representing people. Legislation. MPs will tell you, I don't want to be, why should I be on the floor? Wanasema hiyo kizungu mingi ya nini? Tumachia watu wa kizungu. Watu wa ground hawa complain. MPs should be doing oversight, which is the biggest, for me, function, the watchman function. So, wanalambishwa kidogo kitu kama 100 million, wanakuwa busy na hako ka 100 million per year, inakuja imechelewa na hizo vitu zingine, but because the MP has got a check to give here and there, he has forgotten the most important thing that we now miss in our governance. The weakest link today in our governance is parliament. Specifically for me, the oversight function. But what is the biggest contributor to why oversight is not working? It is CDF. So, on the day MPs do not have CDF, we will have a properly functional oversight unit. They will have time to actually put government to check. But now they are not, because CDF is keeping them busy. So every time you hear about the best performing members of parliament, it's not, they are not parliamentarians, they are not legislators. Those are just best performing CDF managers. Already CDF offends the principle of separation of powers. The Supreme Court has had its say on it. There's still a case pending on the same. Legislatures, whether they be at county level or at national level, the bicameral house that we have today, should not by any way be associated with executive functions. They become compromised. So, as a president, if I want to control the houses, I just want to ensure, and I say that even as I support government, deep down I know that for us to have a country that will move forward,
fix the legislature.
We need to fix the legislature. We need to fix specifically the National Assembly. It has got so far important functions. But what do we have there? Good CDF managers. So those guys are going to do very little representation. They're going to do almost zero legislation. And on oversight, forget it. Yet, you people are complaining about watu kuiba. Sasa watchman amesha shiriki na wale watu wenye wanaiba, for example. Do you have anybody watching over you? No one is doing that.
No oversight.
So, CDF can be administered separately. Of course, in law, they will argue that MP has no role on CDF. Yet, if a member of parliament dies today, you come up with a new committee, a CDF. Why are you coming up with a new committee CDF if he was just the patron. And that in law, de jure he has no function. But de facto, you cannot even sit in a CDF committee if you didn't support that member of parliament. But in law, it's not there. In fact, we know that is how it happens. The reason why oversight is still a problem, the reason why the president can actually rest easy, the reason why cabinet secretaries have got it easy, the reason why people are still stealing and not being caught is because the oversight function has been compromised. And here, I know as a policy, there are sometimes where policies become counterproductive. CDF is one of those good policies that, of course, came in. It has got its positives and then it has got its negatives. Unless tutoi nyama kwa mdomo ya MPs hii inaitwa ya CDF. So we are busy with about 40 billion. We are losing trillions of money because the watchmen we brought in wamepatiwa peremende. Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, insightful conversation by Arnold Maliba, and we keep subscribing to this YouTube channel for more contents like this. And we are going to look at just in the same breath we want to talk about strength of political parties and of course the National Dialogue Committee. And starting off with the NADCO, the Azimio coalition has threatened to pull out of the NADCO if the cost of living is not addressed. And we ask ourselves, why do they have to come to this point, day 70-something, 80-something, at this very point, all the expenses used, all that time, for them to say that if you bring this to parliament, I'm going to tear that paper. Did it have to get to there?
You know, first of all, the cost of living shouldn't be an issue because we have got a government in office that part and parcel of their mandate is actually to work around that. We cannot bring that on the table for negotiation.
Why not?
It invalidates the government of the day.
But you know, government has to work with the opposition.
Well, not in that. But here we are trying to come up with it's a ceasefire document, like we are in war. If the government is going to accept the cost of living to actually be part and parcel of what the NADCO team is doing, they will be invalidating themselves. They will be saying we are unable to run this government. And therefore their legitimacy is actually put to test. Two, it's actually a populist proposal by the opposition, knowing too well that you cannot turn around an economy by sitting down on the table. You can't. You are not going to pay Kenya's debt 10 trillion by sitting at Bomas. What miracle is Kalonzo and Ichungwa going to do in Bomas that will actually give us 10 trillion? Somehow, will there be a gold mine where they are seated there that will actually bring in 10 trillion shillings to actually take away this? Definitely no. So, the cost of living is brought down at different levels. Number one, by ensuring that the economy works. That is so complex a process that you cannot actually reduce it. But that is even, I don't have the exact words for that, but it's an abuse on the science that is economic management. There are few people are going to actually talk. The cost of living is reduced on farms. So when you actually subsidize production, people who are on the ground who are farming, food will become cheaper.
But remember, they went to the
cost
streets.
Of living.
They went to the streets because of that cost of living, and now if not addressed, are we going back to the streets?
Let's just be real. Initially, for 3 times the opposition went to the streets, the cost of living was always not a priority. It was number 4. Until the people told them, my friend, we are not interested with servers and staff.
Audits.
We are interested in the cost of living. That is how then they swapped it. Let us not forget that. So for them, the cost of living is the icing on the cake. Sometimes the cake inside is very ugly. It could be so sweet, but very ugly. So they want to sprinkle the cost of living on top, but then deep down it's about their own issues. Elections 2022, that's the biggest issue there. For them, that is the big issue. They still are hoping that they can get to government by way of discussion and the handshakes and stuff. But then, like BBI, this cost of living is being sprinkled huku juju. So that then tulazimisho sisi tumeze kwa sababu so long as it's about the cost of living, the people will embrace it. But then, are we doing justice to that particular agenda? No, you don't do justice to that agenda by turning it into a talking point.
It's the work of the government.
The cost of living is actually an all-encompassing process. When you subsidize farming, you ensure that the cost of food will be lower. When you create jobs, it means that people are going to get money and they are able to spend. When you allow the currency to actually find its logical market value, you are trying to ensure that then the market shocks do not then affect people who are trading as much. When you try to have G to G, where you actually can guarantee the availability of fuel without uninflamed prices, you are trying to do something about it. When you go out to put in austerity measures to ensure that you can raise enough money so that you can pay debts that are falling due, that is also going to actually then reflect in the cost of living. So about 8 indicators that you will actually be looking at, but then a discussion at Bomas is not one of those ways of bringing down the cost of living.
But they can't just sit back. They
No,
can't
I'm telling you,
just
it's
sit
a
back
populist.
and do nothing.
It's a bait for the people. It's a bait. So that hii lazima mkunywe. Have you realized that there are tablets for children? Deep inside is actually very bitter. That is the real medicinal thing. But then there is a sweet coating on top. So you are given so that then it confuses you. And then already it's in the mouth. By the time you feel ile kitu chungu, umenyongwa hapo umekunywa. So for these other guys, they are trying to play that game with us as a people. And we shouldn't do this. The same way BBI was not so much about us. But then there were a lot of good, the icing on the cake to ensure that it was palatable for us. So we forget about ile uchungu ingine, but aka kasukari kadogo, then it's good. We shouldn't actually reduce economic management to such like a pedestrian way of actually going about it.
Okay. Yeah. And so our final point of discussion is the rifts in the UDA party. And I want to generally look at this in the rifts in political party. Why can't we have formidable political parties in Kenya that sustain an agenda to a point of after elections? But it's usually it's now get to an ethnical organization. People in central Kenya are saying these UDA positions should be for people in central Kenya. It's now a rift between central and rift. And we've also seen an attack from the executive. We've seen an attack from the senators to the executive. Cheriot and his team have been calling some CSS incompetent. We've seen Cherargei call Ababu Namwamba incompetent. Yes, they're in the same party that gave us the best of their best. So those are two things. Political parties and their formidability, and this attack and the rift in the UDA party and in the Kenya Kwanza administration with the UDA party.
So do we look at Kenya Kwanza as a whole, or do we look at UDA?
Both.
Well, I don't think that anything that is happening in UDA is foreign to political parties. Across the world, political parties are platforms of robust conversations. And robust conversations are not easy. If anyone ever told you that dialogue is easy, they lied to you. Dialogue is difficult. That is why people fight. So this one is a vigorous dialogue people are having. Elections should be coming up on 9th.
In December.
If all work well. But political parties are places where it's not a choir. It's a place where people with the different thinking have to actually force their ideas and thinking to at least have it in one move. Those are different small battles here and there, but the whole idea is that they fight for, their outcome is about a war, not the battles that they are fighting here and there. So if I'm a legislator from UDA, does it mean that I will have to keep quiet if somebody in the executive is not doing it right? That is not what I was actually sent out to do. So it is okay for Senator Aaron and the senators and members of parliament to call out CSS they feel are not doing the right thing. So when Cherargei calls out Namwamba, Cherargei is just exercising his work as a member of parliament. He is a member of parliament, of the bicameral parliament, sitting in the Senate.
Yeah.
So he is doing his work. That's part and parcel of representation. That's part and parcel of speaking out for people and even doing oversight. Yes, he's doing that. When Aaron feels like Moses Kuria is not doing it right, Aaron wasn't elected by the people of Kericho to come and sing a UDA choir where a song is composed elsewhere. So Aaron has got a right to actually deal with that. That does not, you cannot equate that, people doing their work, to disunity. when Khalwale comes out and feels like the deputy president is not doing the right thing, and he calls him out, do not look at that as disunity.
There is disunity because
that's not disunity.
We've seen a crop of Kenya Kwanza leaders who cannot call the king while he's naked. Whatever the president says, they go with it. But when you see a different language being spoken, you look at it and you see that there's some self-interest there.
Let me ask you. When Dr. Boni Khalwale was actually raising his issues about the deputy president, was he fundamentally talking about the ideals of UDA?
He talked about the deputy president being condescending in the party and leaving out the Luya community.
That is why he identified the person of the deputy president as an individual. He did not say that the deputy president, for example, had violated the ideals of the party. They were not differing on ideals of the party. They have a different way of looking at how each other is conducting their own business. So that Senator Khalwale's outbursts have nothing to do with the disunity in the party.
You've seen Didmas Baraza call out Cleophas Malala, the SSG leadership.
Again, he's also like telling the SG, you are not doing your work right. A political party, I need to repeat, is not a choir.
But there needs to be unity because you went there with a common agenda.
Unity of purpose, because political parties exist for purposes of capturing power, administering state, and bettering the people's lives, depending on the plans they have, the ideology they espouse. But political parties are not choirs. They are not supposed to sing in harmony.
Really?
Yes, because political parties should be platforms where different ideas can actually emerge. The battle of ideas is not an easy one. So if this party is actually going to not to be characterized by silence and harmony, that is not a political party. Because these are people who are ambitious. They have got ideas. They are people who have been sent by people. You expect that friction. At the end of the day, the best ideas will carry the day.
Okay, I'm curious. What do you see what do you see is the fate of the UDA party?
The UDA party is still around for quite a long time. At the moment, it's the single most, if you are to look at a party per se, not that Majitu story that we created called the coalition parties. But it doesn't exist. That's why there's ODM that is actually vibrant doing its own stuff. UDA is currently Kenya's biggest political party. Policy-wise, they are the people who are ruling government. That is the ruling party. You look at their ideology and the plans, they look so much like the nation. The mode might be at variance at the speed at which they are doing it, but it feels like the nation of the moment. So UDA party is going places, but then, of course, it's going to have its tests as they think about going to elections. If they are lucky enough to go to elections, I know it's going to have its... ODM has not done elections for a long time since the Men in Black. So they have come up with micro-elections, mini elections. So you just replace people in the village. So like you go to Mumias in Matungu, where I come from, you decide to say, okay, so-and-so left, so replace them. Then you update the register, you update the leadership role, going up that way, but not doing general elections. Elections are divisive, very divisive. It's not just the general elections we have in this country, even political party elections. A party feels, especially in this particular country, every time we go to elections, people treat it as life and death. And that is where the biggest problem is. So, as UDA looks at going at polls, you're going to have problems between leaders from different areas, people running for different... because for politicians, they don't just think about today. They already have got today in their pocket. So they're thinking about tomorrow. And that tomorrow, you will not wait until tomorrow. So if you want to become president tomorrow, you start working today. And that is where a little bit of the clashes of ideology, clashes of egos, clashes of ambition. So that is expected. But as a party, I know that UDA is actually in a place where they can actually manage all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Arnold. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an exciting, insightful conversation here with Matungu's finest, Arnold Maliba, who you vied for
Well, I've run in the past, but I'll be running for the Matungu parliamentary seat in 2027.
Mmesikia ashatuambia.
I work every day. You can check my website.
Who is the current member of parliament?
He's a neighbor of mine called Peter Nabulindo. But
Nabulindo, I know him.
Yeah, so I'm looking for it. Even if you went online, by then you searched for Matungu, most likely you'll end up on my page.
Okay.
Somehow, the world has conspired that in 2027, they really don't need to look far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now share this video to as many people as possible. Like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Na tuko na mheshimiwa hapa already. Kama wewe ni mtu wa Matungu, I hope umesikia maneno yake na mtutampigia kura. So until next time, asante sana and see you.